gridsense, more than just a smart solution. Power production has so far been adjusted to match consumption. This means that only as much power was generated as was then consumed. With the current turnaround that has been initiated in the energy sector, decentralized energy supplies, such as energy produced by photovoltaic system and wind turbines, mean that electricity distribution networks have to be able to cope with varying loads caused by irregular power feed-in. This leads to local grid overload. The challenges are becoming even greater with the increased use of new renewable energy supplies. Wind energy continues to be available at night, for example, whereas photovoltaic systems are unable to produce power at night. The consequence could be an expensive expansion of the grid, or alternatively, an intelligent solution that generates minimum costs, gridsense. Whereas conventional electricity production used to be in line with electricity consumption, and consumption peaks in the grid mainly occurred in the evenings and at midday, with photovoltaic systems and wind turbines, the grid now also has to cope with the additional input peaks at irregular times. With gridsense, we transfer the loads in buildings to these input peaks, breaking down the peaks and thus reducing grid load. The gridsense-enabled devices that consume the most energy in buildings are, for example, house batteries, boilers, heat pumps, and charging stations for electric cars. So what does this mean for the energy consumers in the building? Gridsense optimizes the time at which energy is sourced within a building or a plant. For all gridsense-equipped devices, using decentralized intelligence. Gridsense takes account of individual user behavior, grid load, and electricity prices. Gridsense uses artificial intelligence to learn and anticipate user behavior, measures and records grid loads, and at the same time reduces electricity costs. This happens without the user being aware of it, and without it restricting the user in any way. It does not need to communicate with any external energy management system in order to do so. Gridsense can do even more. With gridsense, information such as more dynamic electricity prices, weather reports, storage status, and other data can in future be integrated in the optimization process. With this step, communication capabilities and a storage facility, for example a battery for a building, are also integrated, and a virtual power plant can also be set up. The advantages of gridsense at a glance. Minimizes electricity bills for the end consumer. Minimizes grid expansion expenditure for the energy provider. Raises the proportion of energy self-sufficiency. Low installation costs and easy setup and commissioning. High level of data security and reliability. Optimum utilization of new renewable energies. With gridsense, everyone wins. The end consumer, the energy provider, the environment, and not least, also our society. Gridsense, more than smart.